Good afternoon all. I hope all are fine. Welcome to the economics class. In the last class, we saw about the functions of Reserve Bank with respect to industrial finance, and we learnt about three institutions which are at all India level, about IFCI, ICICI and IDBI. These operate at national level. These are the financial institutions through which the RBI regulates the industrial finance. Next, today we shall learn about the state level institutions. Under the state level institutions, we have the State Finance Corporation, that is SFCs, and the SIDCO, that is State Industrial Development Corporation. Now, to learn about the State Finance Corporation, in the year 1951, the Government of India, it passed an act, stating that through the state financial corporations, the states can fund for the industrial development of its entrepreneurs within that state. To whom all it will fund? It will fund to the medium industrial units and small business industrial units. And these industrial units, the criteria for getting loans through IFCs is that they have to belong to the small industrial sector or medium industrial sector, and apart from that, the SFCs also do the underwriting works of the industrial unit, having paid up share capital. If the industrial unit is a joint stock company where it raises finance through floating of equity shares, the SFCs undertake the work of underwriting also, where instead of the industrial units directly floating their share capital, this underwriting work is taken by SFCs also. And apart from that, it funds for the business units whose reserves does not exceed 1 crore. And if it is exceeding 1 crore, the state level institutions will not come into operation. The national level institutions comes into operation and gives the finances. So whosever reserves are not exceeding 1 crore, the State Financial Corporation can sanction the industrial finance through the SFCs to a maximum limit of 60 lakhs. Okay, and again, for the refinancing of these loans, the SFCs can take up the help of IDBI, that is the Industrial Development Bank of India. Through that, they can refinance and do the borrowings. Okay, and then lend to the industrial units. Okay, and not only that, they can also sell the bonds of the SFCs also. They also can raise share capital by floating the equity shares. Next is SIDCO. When we talk of SIDCO, the state government has totally, the SIDCO is totally owned by the state government of every state, and their function is not only to give financial services, but it is also responsible for accelerating the industrial development in their particular state. Okay, the growth of industries, the main task depends upon the SIDCO also. And again, apart from providing loans and all, their work is concerned with sale of shares and debentures, and they also undertake and they also do the guarantees for the industrial units for the loans that they have borrowed or for the machineries that they have borrowed. They take up the guarantee work, and they also undertake the task of underwriting the shares and securities of the listed companies, which are small size and medium size industrial units. And not only that, they also do the direct subscription of the shares and debentures also. And in promoting the technology and economic surveys are also being done, and the project identification is being made by the SIDCOs, and the best project is being identified, and the revenue and the financing is done based on the product identification and the technological survey and economic survey that is being made by the SIDCOs. And the feasible study is analyzed, and then the selection process is made, and apart from this, training for the entrepreneurs is also given through the SIDCOs. Next, apart from the above mentioned works, the composition of the SIDCOs, the share capital of the SIDCO comprises of 26% of the share is held by SIDCOs, and 25% of its equity is held by the private co-promoters, and the remaining percentage is left for public investment. So this is the composition of the share capital of the SIDCO. Let me just explain once again. 26% of the share value is held by the SIDCO. Out of that, 25% is of the equity is held by the private co-promoters. Whoever are in charge of promoting the SIDCO, it is 25% is held by them, and the remaining is offered for public subscription. This is the composition of the finance of the SIDCO. Next is, apart from this, the administration. It comes directly under the state government. Whatever the incentive schemes that are being announced by the state government is applicable for SIDCO, and they get the refinancing. Where do by way of raising share capital they get the financing. Apart from that, the SIDCO gets refinance facility from the IDBI also. There is a small spelling mistake here. Facilities from IDBI. It is given as from IDBI. Take it as from IDBI. And they also borrow through bonds, and they also accept deposits like any other commercial bank also. So this is the functioning of SIDCO. Let me just give you a small recap once again. The SIDCO is totally a state government undertaking. It is totally wholly owned by the state government, which means the employees of SIDCO are the state government employees. And these financial institutions, they not only do the financing work, but they are also entrusted with the responsibility of accelerating the industrialization in their respective states. Next is, they provide financial assistance. How do they provide financial assistance? One is by way of giving loans, and by way of giving guarantee for the loans that are being taken by the industrial units. And apart from that, they do the underwriting works, and not only that, they also directly enter into the subscription of shares and debentures. In addition to all this, they do the promotional activities such as making technological and economic survey, and they identify the projects, and they prepare the feasibility survey of the projects that are being shortlisted, and select the best project and give the training for the entrepreneurs for the development of industries, for the development of the industrial sector. And the composition of the SIDCO is like 26% of the SIDCO, of the equity share is held by the SIDCO, and 25% is held of the equity is held by the private co-promoters, and the remaining is offered for public investment. And apart from that, the administration, it is purely a state government administration. The incentive schemes, whatever the government declares, is applicable for this. And for refinancing facility, it takes the help of the IDBI, and not only that, it also borrows through bonds and also accepts the deposits like any other commercial bank. Next is monetary policy. Monetary policy, it is a macroeconomic policy. Whenever I say macroeconomics, it is a study of economy as a large. Okay. So any policy which is intended for the promotion or for the growth of an economy or for the development of an economy comes under macroeconomic policy. Now let us learn, when we talk of macroeconomic policy, the organization or the institution which is responsible for formulating the monetary policy is the central bank of any country. The prime work is management of money supply. Under the monetary policy, there are two main policies, not policies. Okay, it has to take into consideration the money supply. It has to control the money supply in the economy, and it has to also see that the rate of interest also should be taken care. Through these two aspects only, the monetary policy can be implemented effectively. Now, to achieve the objectives, macroeconomic objectives, okay, every country will adopt suitable monetary policies. What are the objectives? First is macroeconomic, to achieve the objectives like inflation, to have a control of the inflation. Inflation is what? A constant increase in the price of the commodity. And in inflation, in the previous chapter, we learnt about the different types of inflation. Okay, if the mild inflation, creeping inflation, walking inflation, running inflation, and galloping inflation we saw. Out of this, creeping and walking is not harmful for an economy, but running inflation and galloping inflation are only danger for an economy. So, to have a control of the inflation, monetary policy should be effective. Next is consumption of the goods and services. Growth and liquidity also are the important features that has to be taken into consideration when we frame the macroeconomic objectives. the significance, why we need to have a macroeconomic objective. This was understood only after the World War II. Okay, so we need to give more emphasis for, just because of the World War, initiation were taken by world economists, okay, to see that many of the countries were hit very badly because of after the World War, and to bring those countries from the depression. Okay, various countries adopted different macroeconomic policies to suit their country's requirement. So during that process, one of the initiation which was made by Milton Friedman, okay, he brought in the principle or doctrine of monetarianism. What do you call it as? Monetarianism. It was Milton Friedman. He brought the doctrine of monetarianism, and he was a Nobel Prize winner in the year 1976, and he has written a book called as Monetary History of the United States between 1867 to 1960. And during the Great Depression of 1930s, many of the countries were largely, okay, it was largely the outcome of the bungling monetary policy of Federal Reserve System. So he said that many of the countries were able to come out of the depression because of adopting suitable monetary policies. Few countries were unable to bring back their country from the depression state because of the bungling monetary policy, because of the incompetent monetary policy that those countries followed. Okay, so to quote here, the work of J.M. Keynes and Milton Friedman, okay, is very, very remarkable in bringing those countries from the Great Depression of 1930s. It was again a debacle caused because of the Second World War. Now let us understand what are the monetary policy. Expansionary monetary policy and contractionary monetary policy. When we talk of expansionary monetary policy, you otherwise call it as cheap money policy. Cheap money policy, the word cheap itself says that it is economical. That is, it is not that very costly. Okay, now when cheap economic policy is followed, it means that there is expansion of money supply. When money becomes cheaper, what will happen when you are able to get loans, short-term loans and medium-term loans at a lower interest rate? What will happen? When the rate of interest is low, entrepreneurs will be motivated. Okay, will be motivated to borrow more money because I am able to get money at a lesser rate of interest. When I borrow more money, I infuse money into the production process. As a result, money supply will increase. This you call it as expansionary policy. Expansionary policy is what policy? Cheap money policy. When money is being put into the economic activities, what will happen? Production will increase. When production increases, automatically employment also will increase. When employment increases, what will happen? Income will increase. When income increases, what will happen? People will start consuming more goods and services. When people consume more goods and services, what does it lead to? It leads to increase in aggregate demand. If I am consuming more goods, it means that I am demanding more goods and services. When demand increases, what will happen? The entrepreneur will be motivated to produce more goods and services. Price will automatically increase. When price increases steadily, it is a good growth for an economy. So it will be a tonic for the entrepreneur because price keeps on increasing. As a result, production process also increases. Cheap labor is also being followed here. So this vicious circle, okay, operates, okay, when expansionary policy is being followed. This is really a boost for short-term growth. Okay, as a result, the gross GDP of a country sees an increase or growth in the GDP. Next is contractionary monetary policy. It is a dear money policy. Dear money policy means where the rate of interest are high on the higher side. When the rate of interest is higher than regular rate of interest, say for example, if you are able to get a business loan, all these days you are able to get a business loan at 10%, let me assume. Now, when dear money policy is being followed, what will happen? This 10% will increase to 13%. What happens here? Your capital is becoming costly here. where you were borrowing 10 lakhs, now you will not borrow 10 lakhs, you will borrow only 7 lakhs because you need to pay more interest when you are borrowing 10 lakhs. So as a result, money supply will shrink in the economy. So this contractionary money policy, monetary policy, it will lead to what? When money supply is shrinking, investment into the production process will get reduced. When investment is reducing, production reduces. When production reduces, automatically employment also reduces, which means it leads to increase in the unemployment. When unemployment is increasing, what will happen? Income is reducing. Okay, people's spending also comes down. Okay, so all this leads to economic recession. Okay, what does it lead to? Economic recession if this is implemented too vigorously. This will happen, this contractionary monetary policy will happen only when the country is flooded with money, with more of money supply, and this money supply has to be taken out of the country. Only in such a situation, this contractionary monetary policy will be followed. Next is the two phases of monetary policy. What will happen when dear money policy is followed and cheap money policy is followed? The small blue color and blue color table, no, it tells us the two situations when dear money policy and cheap money policy is followed. When there is inflation, when price keeps on increasing, when there is more money supply in the economy, the central bank adopts cheap money policy. When there is cheap money policy, first thing is what? Your borrowing becomes easy. You are able to borrow very easily. Next is when during inflation, there is more money in the hands of the consumers. As a result, consumers will buy more goods and services. Business will expand because you are able to get money, loans at a cheaper rate of interest. As a result, investment into the business will expand. More people are employed. During inflation time only, there will be good enough number of employment opportunities being created because cheap money policy is followed. As a result, production increases, investment increases. When investment increases, entrepreneurs are able to create more employment opportunities. And when employment increases, income increases. So people have enough money to spend also. So these are the 5 outcomes during inflation when cheap money policy is being followed. During recession, that is when dear money policy is followed, where the rate of interest becomes high. When the rate of interest is becoming high, what is the first problem? Difficulty in borrowing. I find it very difficult to borrow when the rate of interest is very high. As a result, what will happen? Businesses postpone expansion. People will never think of borrowing at a high rate of interest and putting it into the business. As a result, what will they think? Let the rate of interest come down, then I shall start the next project. So businesses keeps postponing. The expansion projects all gets postponed to a later date. As a result, what will happen? Production is reduced. When the business proposals are postponed to a later date, production is getting reduced. When production is getting reduced, it results in unemployment. Unemployment will increase. When unemployment increases, what will happen? Income reduces. When income reduces, consumers have only less amount of money. As a result, they will buy only less. Okay, we'll take the second point to the last this thing. Only then there will be continuity of the concept. Okay, let the second point be the fifth point. Okay, you can just bring it to the last point. So these are the situations of dear money policy where an economy during the time of inflation, what is followed, and during the time of recession, what is the situation. Next is, what are the objectives of monetary policy? When we look into the objectives of monetary policy, the main objective is stabilization. Okay, the function of stabilizing the economy, there should not be fluctuations in the economic conditions in a country. There should be a stability in the money supply, and not only that, there should be maintenance of proper equilibrium in the economic system. Demand should not be on the higher side, supply should not be on the lower side. There should be maintenance of equilibrium between the demand and supply conditions. Not only that, apart from that, we have got certain specific objectives which we shall be learning one after the other. And that too, monetary policy, it has to be very effective. It has to be more than a dynamic policy, because only when it is a dynamic policy, depending on the changing economic condition in a country, Okay, suitable conditions or suitable policies could be effected and growth could be witnessed. Now it is it is widely recognized as monetary policy can be the power tool of economic transformation. So for a country to transform from the growth stage to the development stage, definitely they should employ a suitable monetary policy for effective growth and development. Now looking into the monetary policies, the first policy is neutrality of money. When we look into the neutrality of money, economists like Wicksteed, Hayek and Robertson were the chief proponents of this concept of neutrality of money. That is, the money value should not keep on fluctuating. Suppose when the monetary authority, they should aim at neutrality of money in the economy. The value of Indian currency in terms of other currencies should not keep on fluctuating. When it is fluctuating, it shows that there is disturbances or distortions in the operating system, in the economic system of the country. So the first point is neutrality of money. The money value should not keep on changing. Once this is the main root cause of all the economic fluctuations. So when this is kept under control, the whole economic operations will be intact itself. Next is exchange rate stability. This is in fact a traditional objective of the monetary policy, of the monetary authority. That is, here whenever there is disequilibrium in the balance of payment in a country. Disequilibrium means the difference between the value of exports and the value of imports. So whenever there is disequilibrium, it will be automatically corrected by the movement of the gold standards. That is, expand, just underline this, expand credit currency and expand currency and credit when gold is coming in, contract currency and credit when gold is going out. Just underline that. The exchange rate stability is popularized because of this logic. Expand currency and credit when gold is coming in, and contract currency and credit when gold is going out. This system will correct the disequilibrium in the balance of payment and exchange rate stability